Breaking news, ABC has just announced here that they will be preempting.
I'm Chris Hayes. When Stephen Colbert announced that his late night show was being canceled back in July, the president of the United States, Donald Trump, had a chilling reaction.
Fallon has no talent. Kimmel has no talent.
Late night television has always been a stage for laughter, but tonight its spotlight reveals a storm that cuts far deeper than comedy alone, stirring questions about power, politics, and freedom of speech. As breaking news spreads that ABC has pulled Jimmy Kimmel Live off the air, audiences everywhere are left wondering why such a bold move came without warning or explanation. The decision followed remarks about a tragic shooting that claimed the life of Charlie Kirk, and Kimmel's words sparked a debate no one could contain. Viewers saw anger erupt online, while industry insiders whispered about pressure from Washington and private broadcasters alike. What really happened inside those boardrooms, and who decided to silence one of America's most familiar voices? Tonight, we take you behind the headlines, past the rumors, and into the evidence that shaped this extraordinary story. Stay tuned, because what begins as a late-night controversy may reveal something vital about how speech and power collide in modern media. If you care about uncovering the full truth behind stories that shape our culture, make sure you hit subscribe right now. Our first stop takes us inside MSNBC's newsroom, moments before the news alert flashed across their screen announcing Kimmel's suspension. The host carefully explained ABC's confirmation, framing it as an unprecedented step during an already tense broadcast covering a national tragedy. She quoted a portion of Kimmel's comments, noting that some references about the shooter's motives may not have been fully accurate, yet they still sparked outrage across ideological lines. As she spoke, viewers sensed the gravity of a network altering its schedule in response to heated public debate. This wasn't just programming news, it was a window into how fast reputational storms gather in the age of social media. Listen closely now to how she delivered that moment, capturing urgency and restraint at once.
Breaking news, ABC has just announced here that they will be preempting the very well-known show Jimmy Kimmel Live indefinitely. That's confirmed by ABC, and it comes at a very tense time with many of the issues we've been covering tonight. There was a backlash on the right because Jimmy Kimmel, after the Charlie Kirk shooting, made the statement that he viewed, quote, new lows with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them, and with everything they can to score political points from it, end quote. I've just read part of what Jimmy Kimmel had said, which includes what sounds like an inaccurate reference to the shooter. We've followed, of course, that case closely on this.
That broadcast captured the raw beginnings of a story still taking shape, emphasizing how a single sentence on national TV can send shockwaves through companies and communities alike. By airing only part of Kimmel's monologue, the segment highlighted the need for careful context whenever tragedy intersects with satire. It also planted key questions. Was ABC acting only out of caution, or were other pressures shaping its choice? As we look ahead, remember that initial reports rarely hold the whole picture, yet they often set the tone for everything that follows. The calm but serious tone of MSNBC's coverage prepared audiences for a narrative about responsibility rather than scandal, and it signaled that we should keep an open mind as more facts emerge about the motivations behind ABC's move. Next, a respected legal analyst joined the conversation, bringing clarity to the thin line separating private editorial judgment from potential government involvement. Andrew Weissman reminded viewers that freedom of speech is fundamentally about limiting state power, while companies still retain discretion over their platforms. He stressed the importance of transparency when corporations act swiftly in response to public anger or regulatory commentary. His remarks underscored how easily people conflate personal rights with workplace or network policies, especially during heated cultural moments. Listening to him, one could sense how legal nuance can steady debates that otherwise spiral into partisan shouting. Pay attention to the measured way he explained the stakes surrounding ABC's authority and obligations.
One, it's worth taking a pause because we will learn more about exactly what the statements are and sort of how this came about. When I hear this, I divide it very much as you said. What has the government done versus what has a private actor like ABC done? So first, with respect to the government, that's where it's exactly the conversation we were just having with Katie. The government needs to be really respectful of different viewpoints, even when you think that what is being said is inaccurate or deplorable or both. And so that to me is the more problematic thing, where you'd want to know exactly what were they doing, because you really are not supposed to engage in sort of viewpoint discrimination. Now, a private actor is a very different story. The private actor is entitled to voice their opinions and what they have to say, but a company can also have certain, restrictions on what they do. But again, news organizations, they both have to be accurate, they have to be fair. They, as you know, from time to time will issue retractions and corrections. But also, news organizations should be the first to be defending the First Amendment.
Weissman's calm explanation reframed the drama, reminding audiences that constitutional protections do not bind private companies the way they bind government agencies. Yet his caution about viewpoint discrimination showed that even private actors should act consistently and explain major actions to preserve public trust. His words hinted at the balancing act modern media giants face when free expression collides with brand reputation and audience safety. This moment invited viewers to see beyond hashtags and headlines, asking instead how ethical leadership shapes difficult editorial calls. With that foundation laid, the conversation was ready to widen, moving from network policy to the broader political environment influencing entertainment. As the afternoon wore on, CNN's Brian Stelter stepped in with fresh reporting, confirming how rapidly the situation was accelerating inside ABC and its affiliates. He described negotiations between local stations, Disney executives, and even an FCC official who had criticized Kimmel during an online appearance. Stelter's timeline showed how one comedian's words grew into a cascade of decisions, from affiliate revolts to corporate intervention, within just hours. His account also hinted at the complex dance between regulatory commentary and business strategy when public outrage threatens advertising dollars. Hear now how Stelter pieced together those moving parts in real time, revealing the machinery behind a breaking media controversy.
That's right. This is fast developing this afternoon, Jake, amid pressure from the Trump-aligned FCC. And in the past few minutes, ABC confirmed to CNN that Kimmel's show will be off the air, quote, indefinitely. We have not yet heard from Kimmel or his representatives. That's how quickly this has been developing. But let's back up and look at what Kimmel actually said on the program that has caused controversy. This is from Monday night in his Monday evening monologue. Kimmel suggested that the alleged killer of Charlie Kirk might have been a pro-Trump Republican. He said, quote, the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it. He said in between the finger pointing, there was grieving. Kimmel was expressing what we've heard some other liberals say in recent days, that the motives are unclear and that maybe the suspect in this case was a Republican or was some sort of far-right fringe figure. Of course, there has been a lot of discussion about that in recent days. There's a lot of evidence pointing in other directions about the suspect. But Kimmel was on the air talking about this, making a very serious commentary amid his jokes in his monologue Monday night. Here's where it became interesting earlier today. The FCC chairman, Brendan Carr, went on a far-right webcast and condemned Kimmel and urged ABC to suspend him. He also talked about possible regulatory punishments of Disney because there are lots of different stations that have licenses with the FCC. Within the past hour, we've heard from a big owner of stations that have affiliations with ABC, a company called Nexstar, saying that they were going to suspend Kimmel's show on their station. So in other words, about 24 stations were refusing to air Kimmel's show tonight as a result of this controversy. And then, following word that some of those stations were basically revolting against Kimmel, Disney, the parent company of ABC, decided to yank the show entirely. So that's all we know at the moment. We know that Kimmel will not be on the air tonight or for the foreseeable future because the network says the show has been yanked off the air indefinitely.
Stelter's report illuminated the wider stakes. Entertainment isn't isolated from politics or regulation, especially when broadcast licenses and public image are at risk. The narrative shifted from a single headline to a system of competing interests. Affiliates protecting markets, networks shielding brands, and officials weighing in on content they dislike. Each layer added urgency, proving how modern news stories are shaped not only by facts, but also by reactions to those facts. This set the stage for deeper cultural reflections about humor, grief, and the limits of satire during national sorrow. Into that conversation stepped Joseph Moreno, a former Republican strategist who explored how late-night humor has long wrestled with its treatment of conservative audiences. He argued that years of playful jabs sometimes hardened into predictable ridicule, leaving many viewers feeling unwelcome. Moreno suggested this alienation may explain why hosts occasionally underestimate the impact of edgy remarks during solemn moments. His words added dimension, showing that beyond politics and policy, cultural habits shape how jokes land or misfire in divided times. Let's hear how he framed the feedback loop between comedy, audiences, and national mood.
Are you playing this role?
I don't think this is a legal issue. I don't think this can be pointed to the FCC or the Trump administration and say, well, this is about them going after Kimmel because of what he said. Personally, I think it's more of a cultural issue. And I got to tell you, look, I'm about as moderate a Republican as you're going to get. I'm from New York. I have not been comfortable watching late night television for 15 years because when you have conservative leanings and you're constantly mocked and you constantly feel like you're doing something wrong, you shut it off. You don't watch it anymore. And then what happens is it's circular. If the host doesn't have that audience, the host doesn't worry about keeping an audience like that. It goes in circles, and at some point, you get things like this where you say things, and that wasn't the full quote. The further quote was that he mocked President Trump for flying the flags at half-staff in remembrance of Charlie Kirk and said it's like grieving of a 4-year-old, as a 4-year-old grieves for a goldfish. That was the full quote there.
Moreno's cultural lens revealed that audience trust depends not only on free speech, but also on empathy, especially after collective loss. While satire holds value in democracy, its sharp edges require awareness of timing and tone, or risk becoming part of the very conflict it seeks to critique. His insights prepared us to explore one final dimension, whether any legal or political boundaries were crossed once public officials joined calls for ABC to act. That question led directly to the next voice in this unfolding drama. The last perspective came from CNN's Eli Honig, who examined the constitutional and political implications surrounding Kimmel's removal. He clarified that no lawsuit could challenge ABC's choice because the First Amendment constrains government, not private networks. Yet he raised concern about emerging tactics where officials use regulatory tools to target organizations whose messages they dislike. This, Honig suggested, could blur traditional lines between fair oversight and punitive politics, with lasting effects on free expression. Listen carefully to how he explained this rarely discussed frontier between law and influence.
There's a legal element here. I think Joe's right. Like the First Amendment says Congress shall make no law, which means you can only enforce the First Amendment against the government. So can Jimmy Kimmel sue? No, he can't sue ABC for making a decision to remove him. That's a private entity. But what Donald Trump is doing repeatedly is he's expanding his executive power in two ways. One, I would say, is precedented. That's the traditional stuff. I have more authority to hire and fire executive branch officials. I don't have to respond to Congress, that kind of thing. He's fighting that out in the court. We've seen that before. What's unprecedented, however, is the way Donald Trump is using official power from the FCC on to go after universities, law firms, and media companies that he disagrees with on policy or on politics. That is new. We've not seen that from any president before.
Honig's remarks offered a thoughtful close, reminding viewers that defending healthy debate requires vigilance against both reckless speech and undue power. The Kimmel case became less about one host and more about safeguarding dialogue in an era where jokes, grief, and policy can collide within minutes. By placing the controversy in historical context, he urged us to consider how democratic societies preserve openness while respecting community standards. The suspension of Jimmy Kimmel Live stands as a snapshot of modern media tension, where comedy, tragedy, and political pressure meet on the same stage. Understanding such events demands patience, empathy, and a willingness to weigh multiple sides before forming conclusions. If you found this exploration valuable, give it a like, share it with friends who enjoy smart storytelling, and subscribe so you don't miss future documentaries digging into how culture, law, and media shape our world. Together, we can keep conversations open, informed, and respectful, even when the topics are tough.